Hello. In this set of video lectures, we're going to be talking about legal aspects of healthcare billing and reimbursement. Health insurance specialists have to be knowledgeable about laws and regulations for maintaining and retaining patient records, processing health insurance claims, and all these different things that impact insurance claim processing, such as new laws, new regulations, and so on. So what legal and regulatory terms are you the most familiar with? Laws that impact health insurance processing are included in this. This is a lot of new terms, so you may be encouraged to create flashcards by using 3x5 index cards. Studies indicate that using flashcards is usually more effective for retaining new terminology than applications like Quizlet. Here are just a few of the terms that you'll see, such things as precedent, civil law versus criminal law, subpoena, subpoena ducis tecum, deposition, interrogatory, Federal Register, and more. Please make sure that you have an understanding of these terms going forward. One statute that we get into a lot in healthcare reimbursement are the anti-kickbacks. Kickbacks are basically, you can look at them as bribes or payments to do certain things, refer people to a certain clinic, and so on. And so we have several anti-kickback statutes, including Stark 1, Stark 2, and others. There's some new laws, or new to some of you, that you may be seeing, and a big one is the Healthcare Quality Improvement Act. In addition to providing legal immunity for quality improvement programs, it established the National Practitioner Data Bank in order to track poor quality medical care and prevent physicians from moving from state to state and not having their information follow them. We also have EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, Patient Safety and Quality Improvement Act, the e-exchange, and others. Retaining records is a big responsibility, and this is covered both by federal and state law. The purpose is to ensure the availability for records for use by government agencies and other third parties, including insurance companies. Both CMS and HIPAA mandate retention of records. We can have all the laws and regulations in the world, but unless we have audit and compliance programs, nothing is going to be kept intact. In order to ensure the integrity of government health programs and combat fraud and abuse, we have compliance programs that typically do such things as correct improper payments, detect inappropriate coding and unbundling, and other practices. Compliance programs have identified 4 specific risk areas for physicians, and these include proper coding and billing, ensuring that services are reasonable and necessary, proper documentation, and to avoid improper inducements such as kickbacks and self-referrals. The Medicare Integrity Program was mandated by HIPAA to combat fraud, waste, and abuse. The Medicare Administrative Director reviews claims to review whether services provided are medically reasonable and necessary. Electronic submission of medical documentation systems was implemented to reduce provider and reviewer costs and cycle time. The targeted probe and education process for medical reviews involved the MACs assisting providers and suppliers with reducing claim denials and appeals. The Medicaid Integrity Program Act similarly was mandated by the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005 and does a lot of the same things. They include the payment error rate measurement, which measures improper payments in the Medicaid programs, and Medicaid fraud control units. An important program that we discuss in other classes include the National Correct Coding Initiative program. This reduces Medicare expenditures by detecting inappropriate codes, denying payment for inappropriate codes, and promoting national correct coding methodologies. This includes correct use of modifiers, looking into inappropriate unbundling of procedures, procedure to procedure edits, medically unlikely edits, and add-on code edits. All these are reasons that claims may be denied. In 1996, Congress passed HIPAA due to fraud and abuse concerns. We always think of HIPAA as data security and privacy, but there are also aspects of it that are implemented to decrease fraud and abuse. And these include such things as improving portability and continuity of health insurance in group and individual markets, mandating administrative simplification given privacy, security, and electronic transmission standards, the Healthcare Integrity Protection Data Bank, which was merged with the National Practitioner Data Bank, improving access to long-term care services and coverage, administrative simplification of health insurance, the Medicare Integrity Program, and to have the scope of civil monetary penalties and exclusion authorities. So in other words, if people participate in fraud and abuse, they will be unable to participate in any CMS healthcare program. And that's all I have for you. We'll see you online. Bye now.